We're back with your unpopular Marvel opinions. At StopZilla07 says, hot take, I prefer when the movie costumes aren't a one-to-one adaptation of the comic look. It allows for something that stays true to the character while leaving room for creative ideas. The OG Ant-Man suit and Raimi Spider-Man are perfect examples. Thank God you started off with a hot take, otherwise I wouldn't have known this was gonna be a hot take under a YouTube post asking for your hot takes. Anyway, I think this is a pretty good take that's not discussed enough, to be honest. One of the first things people, including me, think about when they reveal a new superhero costume or design or whatever is how comic accurate is it. And like it said here, it's not really that necessary, just make it look cool. It's always nice to have some pizzazz, you know? Like the Man of Steel Superman suit, no, it's not comic accurate, but it's a pretty cool take on what a modern Superman would look like. Or if we want to take another step further, Bloodsport looks nothing like his comic counterpart, but everyone thought that he looked cool. And yes, I do realize that those two examples are from DC, and this is meant to be about Marvel. I think the key word here is adaptation. Like MCU lines aren't bad inherently, they break up shapes and they give textual differences to make it more visually interesting to the human eye, because we don't want to see a fucking neon spandex for 2 hours on screen. That would look ridiculous. So like it said here, some creative personality that you can see in the costume design, that's always appreciated. At Shasha-0603 says, we need more day-in-the-life projects for superheroes. It's always saving the world and preventing the universe from exploding. Characters would benefit from more personal and smaller scale stories. I think we can agree that this would be nice, but really only on paper. Listen, here's something that most writers adhere to. So if you've never written a story or screenplay or whatever, you will now learn. Most stories that are put to screen are focused on an event that changes the protagonist's life forever. Yes, there are exceptions to this, but fundamentally, a story usually hinges on the fact that our hero goes on a journey and experiences some sort of change, usually within themselves. Otherwise, again, there are exceptions, it's usually not a story worth telling. And to have a day-in-the-life story, that may work for a TV show or a comic, but that is a crazy investment risk to finance a film, especially a blockbuster that's gonna cost hundreds of millions of dollars. This is why the Sam Wilson character in Brave New World didn't really feel that interesting. He doesn't really change much from beginning to end and didn't really feel like a life-changing story for him, whereas Steve Rogers, in every single one of his Captain America films, by the end, he's basically in a new stage of life. And I guess the easiest way to make an event feel more important to a character is to raise the stakes. So that's why we get stakeflation, like, oh, everything is in fucking danger now. But I'm not a professional writer, so I don't know. Also, this comment has two different opinions in one. Just because something's about saving the world doesn't mean it can't be personal either. Thunderbolts is a good example of this. Yes, the world is at stake, but it does rely on a personal and emotional journey to close out the conflict. However, I do agree that relying on world-ending shenanigans often take away from what could have been a more succinct story. I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine had to be about saving the multiverse. It just made it more busy, and for what? Cameos? So yeah, day-in-the-life projects, I think people like the idea of it than they actually would in real life. At Afaha Shah 1266 says, I like the bank heist episode in Born Again Season 1. Didn't feel like a waste of time or even a filler/bottle episode to me. Yeah, I thought it was a nice episode. I thought it was a bit overhated, but I could tell that it was a bit fillerish. Like, you know that they just had to work that shit in. But it felt like a single comic issue between big story arcs, you know? Like, that's why I liked it. So people be begging for day-in-the-life stories, you know, keep it calm, doesn't have to be world-ending and stuff. And when an episode like this comes along, everyone's like, what the fuck? What a waste of time! Fucking get onto the main story! This is why I say that fans usually don't know what they want. No, bro, I just want to see heroes do their street level thing and like their day-to-day shenanigans. But not like stopping a bank robbery. At _Zefster says, if I'm going with MCU, then the Ironheart clip that went viral this year makes sense and is perfectly reasonable as long as you listen to the whole monologue regardless of watching the rest of the episode and didn't look for a reason to hate it. She said that Tony Stark needed funds to become Iron Man, but she's using that to explain why she's using immoral means to acquire funds. So she's saying he'd be able to make money as well since she saw him as a fellow genius. I think I already discussed this in a past video or my discussion channel or something, but I'll cover it again. Yeah, this was the biggest fucking overreaction of all time. I wonder why. And I thought the show was pretty mid. Like, it wasn't awful to me, but it wasn't good either. But the way people would just snip out this one line to just farm views and shit on social media, I'm like, bro, this is crazy. And then everyone's like, well, Tony actually made his suit in a cave with scraps. He doesn't need money to be Iron Man. Well, bitch, you know how long the Mark 1 would last against the first Ironheart suit? Probably less than 2 seconds. Then Tony cranks out the Mark II with his billion-dollar technology. Would that have been possible if he was lower middle class? No. Like, he would have been able to make something, but definitely not that. And I can't believe people were so focused on this little thing to hate on this show when this show had one of the most annoying characters I've ever encountered in the MCU. At Chibi Steak says, I like the grey, colourless color grading in Civil War and other MCU movies. I feel like your dinner is just boiled chicken, white bread, and blanched cauliflower. That airport battle scene in particular and a bunch of other little scenes in that movie, they just look so visually uninteresting, like an expensive TV show. It worked for Winter Soldier with its groundedness, but even that looked better than Civil War, which was a fucking all-out superhero movie. I don't want to blow the load too quick, but from what we've seen of Avengers Doomsday, I think it has potential to be one of the prettiest MCU films ever. Even just the indoor scenes feel intentionally lit, the colors and shadows are popping out nicely, but who knows, that might just be all scenes that don't even make it into the final movie and we just get a bunch of volume grade junk. At the Hannah Cast says, I think making a cinematic universe around Spider-Man villains can work, even without Spider-Man. Anything can work with the right idea and the right filmmakers. Imagine a symbiote space horror or Norman Osborn film that plays like a Jeff Bezos biopic, except he becomes a literal murderous goblin. I think there is potential in this universe idea if Sony was willing to actually plan it out properly. I know there's kind of no point talking about this because the Sony Marvel universe is kind of dead, but considering that 99% of the comments were about the MCU, I appreciate the break. I also think it could have worked. Would it have been ideal? Obviously not. Let's just say that we accept the fact that Sony was gonna go ahead with the Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe whether we liked it or not. I think starting with Venom was a good idea. Lots of people know who he is and he can be forced into anti-hero slash hero role, and yes, it is still weird to me that we got Venom movies without Spider-Man. I think one of the grave mistakes of these Venom movies was the fact that every villain was just a different symbiote. I know the first 3 seasons of the Flash TV show basically did the same thing with speedsters, but they had a full season to flesh out why they're different and how the story affects the character. And I mentioned this before, but I feel like making a Venom movie without Kraven being the villain was such a missed opportunity. It was literally handed to them on a silver platter, and they thought that making a movie about Kraven being a hero was the better option. Could you just imagine how fucking brutal that movie could have been? Tom Hardy's Venom up against Aaron Taylor Johnson's Kraven the Hunter? Dude, fans would have been cheering and seats would have been wet. The symbiote space horror movie, I think that could work. I'm not sure about the Norman Osborn, Jeff Bezos thing, but it could work. Like his origin from the first Spider-Man movie, except that's the entire movie, except with a bit of American Psycho and the substance. Actually, that sounds kind of sick. I personally feel like Spider-Man and Green Goblin are too intertwined with one another, but that's also what I thought about Venom and Spider-Man and Batman and Joker. So what the fuck do I know? I mean, this fucking universe was cooked from the very beginning from the fact that it was coming from Sony. Give it to a passionate producer and yeah, I agree, this could have worked. But thankfully, we'll pass all this supervillain movie without a superhero business. Oh. Guys, we're gonna take a break and go into a segment that I call Ice Cold Takes that were made for skates or could have at least been baked. So I asked for some unpopular opinions. I don't think some of you know what that means. At Tekka3782 says Werewolf by Night is easily one of their best projects. Well, I've never heard anyone call it the worst, that's for sure. At Notify05 says across all of MCU and pre-MCU, Bruce Banner slash Hulk was best written in the Avengers 2012. Wow, I'm not too cold, but I literally haven't heard any other differing opinion in the last 5 years about that topic, so. At Abby Yaputra Hasya 2973 says I wish MCU Quicksilver didn't die. Yeah, because everyone was celebrating with joy when that happened. At Black Rundy says Black Panther was cooler in Civil War and Infinity War than in his own movie, especially his suit in Civil War was the best we've gotten. I honestly don't think I've ever heard anyone say that Black Panther was cooler in his own movie than in Civil War. Sorry. At Forever Kent 2225 says I loved Agatha all along. I enjoyed the characters, the Witch's Road setting, and the challenges. I thought it was all very well written and executed. Bro just gave a review. At Lido1729 says the best depiction of Thor was Infinity War and everything else was not even close. This take could not warm me up even if I was being boiled alive. And back to our regular show. At Person-WZ6IY says, I think that Terrence Howard and Edward Norton should have been listed in the credits of Endgame. Why would they credit actors that weren't even in the movie? I get the concept and everything because they were part of the MCU or whatever, but dude, Credits in blockbuster films are a pain in the ass because there's a bunch of contracts to go through, like, oh, this actor needs at least this many seconds and this much screen time in the credits or whatever. So that would have just been a pain in the ass, and I can see why they wouldn't have even considered that. Also, I don't even know if they would even want their names in this film. At Slurpee YT says Wolverine shouldn't be short. I'm all for comic accuracy, but he has more aura when he's tall. I disagree with both parts of this. I'm not saying he has to be 5'3" exactly, because it might be hard to find a suitable actor to portray the character from that height range, but at least shorter than like 5'8". Okay, I reckon he should be like 5'9". Max. I think Wolverine not being tall adds character to it. Like, imagine if Spider-Man was tall, like he was the same height as Captain America and Thor and shit. I would've been like, this feels wrong. And I'm not trying to be a girl on a dating app with these height standards, okay? I'm just saying that some characters work better with certain physical attributes. And a shorter than average height is the place for Wolverine. Yes, that does give him aura. What the fuck do you mean, you heightest bitch? He's like a chunky, buff, rabid animal. You can't make him tall. Also, the fastball special, Colossus is not doing that shit with a tall ass man. That's why in X-Men the last time he just spins around and throws Wolverine, which is like 1/5 of coolness as the original move. At Infinite Paladin says, I like Professor Hulk and I don't think it's a character downgrade. Bruce being in control of Hulk gave him inner peace. I make fun of Hulk being Professor Hulk in the MCU now, but like I've said in the previous video, it was a logical step in his character arc. What, you wanted him to be the same old character with zero character development for the rest of his life? Do you hear that? It's a Spider-Man editorial team calling for you. At Dr. Mood 67 02 says, doesn't matter if Doctor Doom is done well or not, the MCU will go back to having a saga villain problem even after the rumored reboot. If the rumors are true that they're gonna go ahead with the mutant saga, then I think the most straightforward answer is Apocalypse. There have also been rumors that Mr. Sinister is gonna be the first villain in the first MCU X-Men movie, and since he usually serves Apocalypse, that makes sense. The one big drawback obviously is the fact that we've gotten Apocalypse kind of recently in live action in X-Men Apocalypse, and the MCU tends to stay away from redoing portrayals of villains that we've just seen. Onslaught is another option, very 90s. They'll probably have to rework everything about his character to make him a saga villain. Otherwise, yeah, I agree. I don't know too much about Annihilus, but he also seems like a pretty popular pick. Some have said The Maker. That would be cool, but I'm pretty sure the MCU is gonna stay away from multiverse shenanigans after this whole saga and just have a, you know, a nice reboot. Because we've already been bombarded with cameos and everything, like, don't we just want to do some clean slate world building with half the characters that were established in the previous MCU that are brought in, and it's not really gonna be a reboot because half the characters we already know and then they'll be recasting everyone else, right? Otherwise, if the DCU bombs, they're gonna pull out the very last trick in their sleeve and boom, Marvel vs DC or something, and that's gonna be the end of superhero movies forever. At Tanner Wilmot says, Harry Osborn is a better Venom than Eddie Brock when it comes to adaptations of Spider-Man, like movies, shows, or games. It's a character that's generally already closely connected to Peter, so it's both neater and more impactful than having it just be some guy. And it lets Harry become a villain without just becoming another Green Goblin. I mean, I'm not really sure what this comment means when you say that it only applies to adaptations of Spider-Man. So you're saying Eddie Brock as Venom is superior to Harry Osborn as Venom in the comics. But even if an anime series were to do a 1-to-1 adaptation of Eddie Brock's origin as Venom, Harry would have still been the better choice? Or are you saying that Eddie Brock as Venom is only good in the comics because that's how it was created, and then everything else after that should have just been Harry? I get that it could feel more natural to have Harry as Venom rather than some buff, angry co-worker, but you know what would feel more natural than Harry becoming Venom? Harry becoming a goblin. Okay, listen, it probably would have been better if Harry Osborn had his own goblin identity and not just Green Goblin 2 with the exact same costume and everything. I'm assuming that's why Spider-Man 3 had him as the new goblin with the ski goggles and the ski board and shit, which, you know, I thought was pretty cool as a kid. But the point is, it's some father and son type shit, so yes, it does make sense. I also think that Eddie Brock's origin as a villain is so simple but so well executed in the comics, and we have even yet to see a good adaptation of that since Spectacular Spider-Man or something. That's like more close to 20 years ago. Can we just get that done right first? Like, would you have said the same thing about Scorpion as well? Like, Harry Osborn would have been a better Scorpion than Matt Gargan because Harry Osborn has that close connection to Peter Parker. Sounds kind of unnecessary, right? I think Insomniac Spider-Man 2 did an okay job making Harry Venom, but he didn't really have that anger, that rage, that venom against Spider-Man, so I don't know, was it really Venom or was it just a mindless beast who wanted to take over the world? And again, I think Harry becoming a goblin is cool in a tragic sense because the character is a tragic character, both in the comics and in basically every adaptation of him ever. Also, side note, I don't really keep up with Spider-Man comics these days, but isn't it insane that Harry Osborn is still dead for like 20 plus years now, right? And people still think of him as Peter Parker's best friend. Like, bro's been dead for so long. At Roland-Dice101 says, I prefer Spider-Man with organic webbing as it makes him have the powers of an actual spider instead of just being a dude who can climb on walls. Apart from the spider bite, usually, nothing makes him really a spider. Man, wow, that was a tough read. I would like to say the ability to climb on walls and the proportional strength and speed of a spider, so thank you very much. I can see where this is coming from, but just because his webbing isn't from his natural, supernatural power set doesn't invalidate him from being spider themed. Like, if he makes web shooters and uses those webs, that adds to the spider thing he has going on. I don't mind organic webbing though. If I remember correctly, in the Raimi movies they gave him organic webbing because they thought it was too unrealistic that a high schooler could manufacture such high tech. I see both sides of the argument, but I think people lean towards the mechanical web shooters because it's how it's done in the comics. Oh my god, guys, it does not matter. There are bigger problems in the world right now. At the Turtle says Thunderbolts gets way too much undeserved praise and its message about mental health is non-existent at best and childishly naive at worst. As an MCU movie, I like Thunderbolts. I think it's grown a little bit on me since my review. I've come to appreciate the ensemble cast of it all and the focus on mental health and how that was the crux of resolving the main conflict. So this person has 2 points. The first one being that this movie gets way too much praise. I mean, I don't think it was the greatest movie ever, but I had a fun time and I don't see anyone going like, Thunderbolts was the greatest MCU movie of all time. Like, what undeserved praise are we talking about? Like, I think people just say that it was a good, fun flick. The second part, the message about mental health is non-existent at best and childishly naive at worst. For a Marvel movie, I thought the talk about mental health was alright. Obviously, it wasn't trying to be after Sun or anything, but non-existent at best? That's such a weird, bitchy way of putting it. How can it be non-existent at best if we're here talking about it right now? I don't think the discussion about it was super deep or anything, but dude, it's a superhero movie. Kids are gonna be watching. Childishly naive. I think you're being childishly naive about what kind of movie you expected. Do you want Yelena to actually jump off a building and fucking kill herself? And also, childishly naive at worst is a compliment to the movie, so I'm not really sure what you're trying to say here. God damn it, got me defending Thunderbolts like it's the fucking Social Network or something. Why are they making a sequel to The Social Network? At Hey Hi Howdy 6969 says, the fact that these comments are all MCU related is proof you don't have to adapt comic storylines because no one reads the comics. So this is the final opinion for this video, and yeah, it was very hard to find a good comment that was not MCU related. It's funny because in the DC one it was like 50-50 comics and media, but this one I had to be fucking digging and even then it was barely anything. So yeah, I mean, the only reason you have to be careful about adapting comic storylines is the fact that once it gets announced, there will be some YouTubers who make a fucking 30-minute breakdown covering the whole entire story and 1,000 YouTube shorts, and boom, every fucking kid and their grandma knows the plot of it and they act like they fucking read everything because of one YouTube short. And then they spoil everything. I mean, when was the last time they actually adapted something from the comics? And I mean actually adapted something. Like, usually it's just very loosely or just taking the name. But I'm not trying to gatekeep, okay? Anyone can enjoy comics, even if that is through just doom scrolling on your feed and you don't remember any of it except just one pivotal thing that you can flex to your friends as if you're some fucking comic genius. Good lord, I sound like a pretentious bitch right now. And if you want to see me be more of a pretentious bitch, I have done a couple of these now, covering DC opinions, Marvel opinions, and Invincible opinions actually, because Invincible is coming back soon, so maybe you should watch that video as well. Thank you for everyone who wrote a comment, whether it was a dog shit opinion or not. I'll see you next week.